11th graders in CMS are required to write a research paper. This research paper is part of their English 3 grade. CMS requires that we grade these papers anonymously, so here at Mallard Creek, all certified staff help grade papers. Each person will probably end up grading 2 to 3 papers. Every paper needs to be scored by 2 people, and the 2 people that look at each paper need to come to a consensus on what the score for that paper should be. These are the important elements that are on the rubric that is used to grade the paper. We're going to talk in this training today about the 4 that are in blue with the check marks because they need a little more clarification than the other items in the list. First thing is that the students are going to get a score on the rubric for their sources. What quality of sources do they use? Are the sources authoritative? Are they current? Are they relevant? What we're looking to see here is that students aren't using all .com websites in their research. We expose the students to magazines, journals, newspaper articles, podcasts, all kinds of different sources that we want them to use, a variety in their paper. If you look at this screen capture right here, this database right here called SIRS and this other one called Gale Opposing Viewpoints are 2 subscriptions that we have here at the school for students to access to get journals, newspapers, and magazines. So when you're looking at the student's works cited page, you want to see the word SIRS, the word Gale Opposing Viewpoints, and many of their sources. That will tell you that they're using authoritative sources from magazines, journals, newspapers, etc. If you see a lot of .com websites, that is the signal that they're not using as good of sources. It's not to say that .com sources are all bad. You just want to make sure that what they're using are not just all websites and they're really focusing in on magazines and newspapers and journals. This year, the students are required to use primary sources as some of their sources. And for those of you who are familiar with that term, you know that it means sources that are first-hand or eyewitness accounts of events. The student, to get a 4 on the source part of the rubric, has to have more than one primary source. To get a 3, they need to have one primary source. The student should have their primary sources in bold on their works cited page, and they should have a little explanation underneath that source to tell the reader of their paper why that source is a primary source. Another element that the student will be graded on in the rubric is what's called synthesis, and this is how well the student meshes their ideas with the research that they've found. We also use this section to either reward or deduct points for the length of the paper. The paper is supposed to be 6 to 8 pages. If the paper is not 6 to 8 pages in length, then the student cannot effectively synthesize, so there should be a deduction in points. Another element that the students are required to include in their paper is a graph. To help students accomplish this, we've used a website that you can see here. It's called Create a Graph. It's a very simple tool that allows students to create a simple bar graph, a line graph, or a pie chart. This is what a graph from Create a Graph typically looks like. Students can customize this with the colors that they want and change the font, but pretty much it looks pretty professional. What you should look for here is that the student has a clear title on their graph, that they've labeled the X and the Y axis, and that down at the bottom they have the full citation of where this information came from that they put in their graph. MLA format is the format that we use for the students to write the research paper. So I just want to go over a few things with what MLA format looks like, because a lot of people are familiar with other formats such as APA or Chicago and may not be familiar with MLA. With MLA format, students are supposed to use in-text citations. If you look at this first one here, what this shows is that the author of this, where this paraphrase came from, the author is Worcester, and it came from page 4. Should be in parentheses, the period should be at the end. If the source does not have an author, the student would use the title of the article. So for instance, the second one shows pig business as the title of the article. That's acceptable because there is no author. One other thing that we want to go over in terms of MLA format, if a student uses the same source in succession in their paper. If you look at this example, you can see they have Von Drell 36, and then the next sentence it just has 36. That's acceptable MLA format. By putting just the 36, it tells the reader of the paper that it's the same author as the previous sentence. In terms of trying to spot plagiarism, there's a couple tips that you can look for. Number one, every in-text citation in the paper should have a matching entry on the works cited page and vice versa. If that doesn't happen, that's usually a red flag that there could be some sort of plagiarism. If you suspect that the student has plagiarized, simply type a phrase into Google, and a lot of times it'll come up immediately and you can find the plagiarized material. Another clue is to look at the dates on the works cited page. A lot of times if they have taken a paper from a student from a previous year, they don't know that they're supposed to change the dates. Every entry in a works cited page should have the date that the student accessed the information. So for this particular batch of students, you would be looking for dates that are September, October, November of 2012. If you see dates from 2011 or the spring of 2012, more than likely that student took a paper from a friend from a previous year.